Welcome to On Tech Ethics with CITI program. Our guests today are Javidi and Sam Bigdeli, who are the co-founders of KavAI, a company that is using active physical intelligence to develop solutions that revolutionize monitoring and safety in industrial environments that pose the greatest threats to both industry and the planet. Today, we are going to discuss active physical intelligence, which is an adaptive foundation model designed for real-time data collection and acquisition. Before we get started, I want to quickly note that this podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not designed to provide legal advice or legal guidance. You should consult with your organization's attorneys if you have questions or concerns about the relevant laws and regulations that may be discussed in this podcast. In addition, the views expressed in this podcast are solely those of our guests. And on that note, welcome to the podcast, Tara and Sam.
Thank you for having us.
It's wonderful to have you. So I just very briefly introduced you both, but to get started, can you tell us more about yourselves and your work at KavAI?
My name is Sam Bigdeli. I'm the co-founder and CEO of KavAI. So engineering background and a business background, serial entrepreneur. And at KavAI, we are tackling some really hard challenges in the AI field. And as you mentioned, active physical intelligence is an area that we're very passionate about. And active physical intelligence is a first sensor native kind of curiosity-driven AI system that, as you mentioned, actively seeks information in the real and the physical world. And that has many applications in many industries. It enables us to have a better understanding of what we're looking for and to prevent, some catastrophes and loss of life and safety. And I can go on and on about it.
And my name is Javidi, and I'm the CTO, co-founder of KavAI with Sam. From the perspective of education and academic work, I do research in a field that is called information theory, where the main problem of interest is how information can be extracted from data and how data can be informative. And as you can imagine, this is a really important question that goes back centuries. I would say that maybe historically, the question of information has been viewed from a philosophical or maybe even linguistic perspective. And then it wasn't until the middle of last century where people asked the question, can we actually think of information as a quantity, in particular as discrete quantities that we can store or communicate? And that sort of gave a very different view of information, that I would call it mechanistically. And so my own research is focused on understanding this. Earlier on, this was a very important topic for building storage devices and communications devices like cell phones and whatnot. But given the success of AI in the past decade, my research is now entirely focused on how next generation of AI systems should be designed from this data information centric point of view, and sort of from that first principle. So in particular at KavAI, I'm focused on really translating these rather academic questions into actually building this next generation of AI systems that will operate in the physical world and try to basically create a sort of an interface between the physical world and the intelligence that we need to interpret and predict and sort of operate the physical environment better.
So going off of that a bit, and I know you touched on this, but can you just tell us some more about how active physical intelligence differs from other artificial intelligence or machine learning systems?
Yeah, so I like to think about the current AI systems, even the very advanced ones. We all like to use these sort of AI assistants that we are getting more and more used to depend on. They all are built on a principle that the data is provided to them, and then they sort of ingest it. So the data process, the data collection of the data has been done prior to building intelligence, the artificial intelligence on it. But when we think about natural intelligence, in contrast, say intelligence in the physical world, we see an animal that we say, that animal is intelligently behaving, or we see other people. We don't limit it to this passively sitting there, ingesting data and analyzing it. We think of intelligence as sort of innately coupled with action and curiosity, right? So basically, we turn our head when we hear a noise, right? We sort of walk towards something we don't recognize to get a better view, right? We pick an object to get a sense for its weight, in order to decide what my Amazon deliveries must probably contain today. So active physical intelligence is our proprietary AI ecosystem that brings this more critical notion of intelligence, this activeness of the intelligence, to the physical spaces, especially physical space, the massive industrial physical spaces that absolutely need it. And we can talk about that, later. But basically, that's what it really means to emphasize, that it is active in the process of extracting data and then ingesting that for building and training.
So, in terms of the data and signals that active physical intelligence relies on, can you just talk some more about that? I know it sounds like it's context specific. So, maybe if you want to share an example or two, but just tell me more about the kind of data and signals that it can use and leverage.
So the first rule of thumb that we build our system is the more sources and signals you have, the better. So basically, we want to be sensor native in the sense that we want to operate with the sensors and their physics in mind. But we also understand that operating in the physical world, you are limited to your sensing, right? So we want it to be general, to kind of capture sensing modalities that different customers have the ability to track, and then, but also put them all together. The very same way we as humans, we understand our sensors, our sensing capability. If those of us who have bad eyesight would wear glasses, so our intelligence is sort of adapted to our sensing capabilities. This is similar in that sense. So to give you an example, and that would be an easy one to build, is that we work with a lot of physical spaces that have cameras. And now cameras' angle of view, their field of view, their sensitivity to light, and so on, can be adapted at all times, right? So our solution profiles these sensors. Now, in this case, it's very simple cameras, and just sort of orchestrates the collection of information to build, first of all, a 3D understanding of the world, but also capture other sensing modalities. So let's say if I have temperature readings, to combine these two type of modalities, the world model that we built will capture that input. But so the nice thing about this, thinking about information from an abstract point of view, is that all of these signals will be digested to be talking about the same information source, which is the physical environment that they're collecting signals from.
So, going off of that example some more, can you tell me about some of the real world applications of this and how it can contribute to safety in an industrial or other environment?
Yeah, so I can give you a couple of simple examples and then pass it to Sam, who will talk about it from the perspective of the larger context. But the examples I can think of is, for example, the cameras I mentioned. If you're running a large site, often you would be interested in safety requirements for the workers in the site. And so you would want the cameras to capture the data, that is the images and videos that are most relevant to the safety requirements. An object is sort of wobbly, the crane is not behaving as is safe. A person has taken off their helmet because they're like cleaning their face, and you need to orchestrate the rest of the site's operation accordingly. So those are the kind of environments where cameras are useful. And then I will pass it to Sam, because we have done this work for other entities that have more interesting sensors in terms of chemical sensors. So I joke that if you think of cameras as eyes, they have noses and ears and so on. So maybe I'll pass it to Sam if you want to talk about this some a little bit more.
Sure. I mean, having physical awareness and being able to understand and reason and know the sensing, all this sensing modality will give you a lot more information. It enables you to get all that information, be able to denoise that information from multiple modalities or multiple sensors. One of the key areas that we have found to be very useful is just think of these sort of large industrial sites, like in kind of like petrochemical or a refinery. You have miles and miles of pipeline and acres of land. And if you want to just very quickly look at this site and try to identify some areas very quickly that have potential issues, how do you do that? And that's what we have been using, active physical intelligence in order to tackle that problem. As Tara mentioned, as you look at a scene with all different modalities of sensing in time and space. So at this moment in time and space, I have high mechanical vibration in this tank. I do also see some higher humidity and the insulation is broken. You really don't need a lot of information and data, trained data, to realize that 4 or 5 of your channels are showing some kind of abnormality. And that kind of triggers your foundation models looking and starting to curiously ask for more resolution or higher coverage and get close to get more information about the anomalies that you see. So this being actively focusing on the area of attention enables you to be way more efficient, use less energy, and make decisions much faster in the physical world. We've done some projects in the oil and gas industry, paid projects that we put that into use. We've been able to show that looking at the world in this kind of wider spectrum of sensing and modality, we using our world model can identify things that they wouldn't have been seen in the past, or they don't even see it today, because they usually either do their inspections in one modality, in one sensor, like a thermal camera, and they look at the site, and then 6 months later they come in and do another kind of inspection, visual inspection. So you can never kind of look at the same tank, same pipe, same valve, and see at that time what are those kind of signals that are coming out of that object that is considered abnormal.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of On Tech Ethics. If you're interested in hearing conversations about the research industry, join me, Alexa McClellan, for CITI's other podcast called On Research with CITI program. You can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the episode.
So bringing all of that together, if I were a staff member at a plant like that, what would the interface look like for me if I was utilizing artificial intelligence in this way and getting the sensor data and the insights from active physical intelligence?
Imagine if you have eyes, like super like sensitive eyes, ears, and nose, and you would walk into the site, and not only you would see visual like RGB signals, you would also see at the same time, you could see the thermal signatures. You could see the humidity. You could hear mechanical vibrations that are coming at the same time, like all of that at the same time. So if you're hearing high mechanical vibration or sound from a pump, and then you can immediately turn around and see, oh, that pump is overheated. So that enables you to quickly make a decision. And that's the interface that we're offering to big industrial use cases that we've picked as our initial beachhead market. Is they can now look at the entire site and have all the data points in this kind of 3D model that's not just a digital twin or a kind of a 3D reconstruction of images. You can peel off different sensing modalities and say, okay, I want to kind of overlay gas signatures that I see around this tank. I want to overlay heat signatures, humidity. And that is very important in diagnosing things. It's just, even when you and I go to the doctor is going to listen to your heart, is going to do some tests. It's not always single modality that is going to give you the ability to increase your signal to noise ratio. And I'll give you an example. We did a project that they had high hydrochloric acid availability in an area, and that area happened to be a high humidity area due to proximity to the cooling tower. So that immediately changes the basically corrosion ratio. So instead of kind of guessing where in the next plant shutdown, where to go and what to look for, they quickly could zone into that particular kind of pipe and tank and put more effort into that. And as a result, you get better, faster turnaround, which saves you a lot of money and helps you not miss the critical things, the false positives and false negatives that happens all the time in these large industrial sites.
It seems like this technology could also be applied in other settings as well beyond industrial sites. So, are there other industries or fields that you think would benefit from using this technology now or in the future?
Yes, absolutely. We're actually in talks with three other verticals. Our focus obviously is on these large industrial sites. It's a very big problem. It's an environmental issue, but we're also talking to public safety and security. One of the really interesting use cases, we're talking to one of the fire departments here in the Bay Area. The response time is 3 minutes, usually to an incident. And we are now offering to send a drone ahead of time to use hyperspectral imaging and a couple of other modalities to basically assess the structural integrity, and also use other modalities to pinpoint where people are in the building. So by the time the engine gets to the site, they have some information ahead of time about should they, enter the building, or from what area, from what, angle to tackle the fire, or things like that. And that's one area. And we also kind of exploring use cases in healthcare and anywhere you kind of interact with people, real world, and you really need to have a kind of an understanding in real time to have to basically have this dynamically decide what to do next. This technology, our foundation model, that's where it really shines.
That's excellent. So, shifting gears a bit, in terms of the ethical challenges that active physical intelligence presents, can you just walk through some of the core ethical issues that you all are thinking about as you deploy this technology in different use cases?
I mean, with all these kind of systems, you always have those concerns, and it's a topic of conversation every day. But in particularly in our approach in physical intelligence, at least at this point, we're kind of conscious and think about it. This intelligence that we're developing it's more about going out there and investigate something to prove your hypothesis. You're curiously looking for information. And if that is in the service of, like, it's kind of a hybrid system with a human kind of operator, or it's just assisting human, that's we kind of, at this point, we're looking at it. But obviously, we're constantly thinking about transparency, how these decisions are made, the agents, and the safety around the agency of the system. Is it doing what it's supposed to do, or it's basically kind of deviating from its decision making or what it's intended to do? We definitely are constantly working on those, and I think it's one of our top priorities.
Yeah, one of the issues that comes up a lot for us is the questions of siloing data of sites. And I think is an interesting conversation. Again, as Sam was mentioning, because we're translating everything in terms of hypotheses about the actual physical space. Some of the knowledge that gets produced are very local, and those are not to be translated to other outside domain. So that's a really important issue that is particularly challenging, is what information is local and is to be kept private, and what information is native to the sensor and it sort of gives you information about the cameras when they see far, the quality is that, right? That is not a private information that needs to be, or private attributes of data collection that needs to be staying in sites. Sort of really working these things out is definitely a part of the decision making when you think about the ethics of what you learn and what you carry from one side to the other.
Absolutely. And with the ethical issues in mind, are there certain design principles that guide your responsible development of active physical intelligence?
Yeah, for sure. The ethics of energy consumption and privacy are the two main sort of philosophical motivation for active learning as opposed to passive learning is. So the idea that you will just have this sort of amazing amount of redundant information that has been given to you for free, the way that it's being like tried in legal cases that I'm sure you and your audience are following up, that model is really what active learning tries to go away with, right? We want to be we build systems that are very, very careful about which piece of information is needed and how critical it is, right? So that's definitely those two. We feel like we already have an edge by relying on these active learning principles as opposed to passive ones. There are other ones that I think, as Sam was talking about, transparency, ability, and such, which is things that we need to address with our customers, are more generic, I would say, to a lot of AI solutions. Sam, am I missing something that?
No, fantastic. I think to kind of reiterate, our goal is, in the company, like really deep kind of philosophy, or you want to call it the vision, is we want to, the system is built to be very efficient in the use of energy and information. Obviously, the more energy, the information you want to process, you need more energy, you need more power. And that's the whole conversation that's going on right now. But the goal really is that we are, from an ethic perspective, we are really, really focusing on what really is the information that we need to process. And we don't want to digitize the hell out of the world and process all the digital information. And that is as our core belief, at our core kind of fundamental design of everything we do.
That's really interesting. So I would imagine that a lot of our listeners would like to learn more about this technology, or possibly get involved in the development of this technology. So with that in mind, do you have any recommendations for additional resources, or just how one can learn more?
Sure. I mean, they can, directly reach out to us or our website or on LinkedIn. We'll be more than happy to we're always interacting, and kind of Tara has a lot of, talks that she's doing around the country and internationally. This is an area that I would strongly recommend that people to look into, because we have to be way more conscious about how we process information and data. We can't just sport information and countless and gigawatts of power in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
And my final question for you both is just, do you have any final thoughts that we've not already touched on?
I definitely would like to emphasize that even though the solution we have is quite general for all physical spaces, we both, Sam and I, feel very strongly that really we have built physical and industrial spaces that are much larger than our ability to monitor them and make sure that they don't end up in places and in states that are causing environment, even human loss of life. Like, we just really have not built our technologies with the same care that we should give the planet. We both feel. And I tend to think of there are diseases and health conditions that we all view as things of the past. And we have learned to really be smart about what we consider rules of hygiene. And this has really changed human life, right? Humanity's life, I should say. And this is what we both, in the bigger picture, are very committed to. Really, building technology should not come at the cost of destroying our planet or hurting some people in service of delivering that technology. And that's something that I think in these very large sites, I would very much like, and I know Sam agrees with me, we would very much like to see incidents, unplanned shutdowns, and irreversible environmental damage to become a thing of the past.
Absolutely, 100%. That is the topic of conversation every week, and that's what kind of drives us. I also want to add one other kind of aspect of all of this, and I think we've kind of touched on it, but it's very important that this is, oh, we really need to be mindful in build systems that require less energy. We cannot go the way we're going with energy, and we have to, in these sites, our need for energy is not going to be going down anytime soon, but we can definitely build models and solutions that can achieve greater results and intelligence that comes at a less cost. And that's an area that Tara and her team is like working day and night on how we can be better at processing information. And human beings and animals are a very good example of that. Even a cat knows physical intelligence, has one of the highest physical intelligence that you can find. There are many examples in the animal kingdom, but a small, model that they have with very little power, 5 watts of power, they have very good spatial temporal understanding of the world.
I think that's a wonderful place to leave our conversation for today. So thank you again, Tara and Sam.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Dan, for having us. It was a pleasure.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, I encourage you to check out CITI Program's other podcasts, courses, and webinars. As technology evolves, so does the need for professionals who understand the ethical responsibilities of its development and use. CITI Program offers ethics-focused, self-paced courses on AI and other emerging technologies, cybersecurity, data management, and more. These courses will help you enhance your skills, deepen your expertise, and lead with integrity. If you're not currently affiliated with a subscribing organization, you can sign up as an independent learner. Check out the link in this episode's description to learn more. And I just want to give a last special thanks to our line producer, Evelyn Fornell, and production and distribution support provided by Raymond Longeray and Megan Stewart. And with that, I look forward to bringing you all more conversations on all things tech ethics.